Hey friends, welcome back. Hope everyone's having a beautiful weekend day whenever you watch this. So today we're going to talk about something that you guys seemed really excited about when I kind of alluded to this a few weeks ago, which is about relationships and being single and how to be happy while you're single and overcoming heartbreak and all that good stuff. For this specific video, I thought I'd get into about 9 tips or just like the 9 processes of how I personally got over heartbreak 4 years ago and how it took me about 3-4 years for me to get to where I am to fully embrace what it means to be alone and what it means to just be happy and content and good, actually great on your own. So a little context, I've been single for about 4 years now. This wasn't like a deliberate thing. I didn't set out to be single and like not date for 4 years. It was more of a, I'm gonna work on myself until I meet someone else, because I've been in 2 relationships spanning a total of about 7 years. They're pretty much back to back. Heartbreak never really is an easy thing, but if you can learn from it, then it's actually a really, really beautiful thing, because it's always darkest before dawn. And before I go on more and ramble more, let's just get started with this video. Again, these tips were kind of in the order of how it's like the little nuggets of wisdom I enlightened to along the way that helped me get to where I am today. So it kind of happened in that order. I try to make it in that order as much as possible. So the first thing is 2 mediocrities never make one great company. This is actually a quote from one of my favorite business books called Good to Great. If 2 meh companies merge and become one company, 2 mediocre things cannot make a great thing. And when I read this around the time when it was like the first time I broke up with my ex, and then didn't know if we were gonna get back together, and then I wanted to get back together, and then we did end up kind of getting back together, but like we didn't make it official. So I'm sure many of you guys can relate to what I just said, that like forever dancing in the gray zone area. I remember reading Good to Great, this is around 2014, and I was just like, dude, that is so true. 2 okay people aren't going to come together and become a great person. And I think that's what I thought for most of my youth up until my early 20s. It doesn't matter if I'm not okay, but as long as I have someone, they'll make things okay for me. And that's very unrealistic and I guess kind of irresponsible, because you're putting a lot of expectations and a lot of burden on someone else when you being okay should be like a internal self thing. That was the first thing that I learned. You know, no matter how much you love someone and no matter how much they love you, if you guys both aren't at a good place mentally, physically, whatever in your career, like if you're not grounded in who you are and what's important to you, it doesn't really matter how great your significant other is. It doesn't really matter how much they love you, because at the end of the day, if you don't know yourself and if you don't love yourself, nothing else is really gonna matter. I owe it to myself and I owe it to my future significant other, to my future husband, that I spend this time that I have working on myself to figure out myself and to be the best that I can be, assuming that he's doing the same thing wherever he is right now. I have no idea where he is, but like wherever he is, he's doing it too. So that when 2 great people come together, you help each other propel to become like even better versions of yourself. But that comes at the foundation of you're already trying to do that on your own. Greatness is not a function of circumstances. Greatness, it turns out, is largely a matter of conscious choice and discipline. So at the end of the day, it really comes down to ourselves. It really comes down to our thoughts. It really comes down to our intentions and like what we want to do and what we want to see happen for ourselves and for our future selves. The second thing is your person does not need to be your significant other. Say person, it's like, I like having my person. I like having a person. I like knowing that I have someone there for me, regardless if they're physically there, if they're whatever. I just like knowing I have a person. I convinced myself again throughout my youth and throughout my early 20s that my person had to be my significant other. And when I let go of this really odd notion, my whole world just opened up. And my whole world completely changed, because I realized my person can be my parents, my person can be my family, my cousins, my person can be my friends, my person could be anyone. Ultimately, the most important thing was that I realized my person can be myself. Like I can be my own person. And when I realized that, I was like, whoa, this is wild. The person that I've been waiting for my whole life, the person that I've been looking for, like the best friend I've always wanted, the boyfriend that I've always wanted, the person who would take care of me, that is me. Like, hello. This whole time I was looking outside, I was looking externally for this thing to fill this void in my heart and in my soul. And this whole time I've been sitting right here, right where I am. And this isn't to say that your person can't be your significant other. I feel like your person should be your significant other. But the main takeaway is that your person can be multiple people and that your person can be yourself. So the third thing is to take time to make sense with why things happen the way they did. So one of my favorite quotes from the book that I'm currently reading, 5 People You Meet in Heaven, is in order to move on, you must understand why you felt what you did and why you no longer need to feel it. Breaking up with my ex, my most recent ex that is not recent at all. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do because it was more about letting go of my attachments to a lot of things rather than letting go of him. What I mean by that is it had less to do with him. I mean, it has everything to do with him because he was the one who made me feel all these things and made me realize all of these things. But it also had nothing to do with him because it was all about me. It was all about the thoughts in my head. It was all about my thoughts and my notions and my attachments to myself and to how I want other people to perceive me, to how I wanted to live this like perfect life and how I wanted to have the image at least of being a perfect person. So I wanted to date a perfect person, which on paper my ex was. Tall, good looking, good family, good school. I mean, we went to the same school, had a good job, all the things that you can check off on the check boxes that you want in your ideal build a boy kit. Yeah, so he had all of that. And I think another layer of it was like, you know, I think it's like a thing that girls want to do. Like if all the girls like this one guy, you want to see if you can be the one to like get that one and lock him down. You guys know what I mean. What I realized with all of that was it had so much more to do with my ego and my vanity and my attachment to being perceived a certain way, to be perceived as like this cool girl or this girl who's like so whatever that she gets to like, you know, be with this guy. And it had less to do about him. And I realized this is why I allow myself to be in a relationship that wasn't making me happy. Because if you're so attached to, for me, it was like satisfying my ego. I allowed a lot of things to slide that should have been non-negotiables. And so with all of that, you don't take time to reflect, to think, to process what happened and why things happened the way they did, you won't really be able to move forward from it, or you won't be able to learn from it. So number 3, importance of making time to make sense of the past, so that number 4, you can try to start letting go of the past. Letting go of the past has a lot to do with forgiveness, of forgiving yourself, forgiving the things that you've done, or maybe some things you've said, or maybe some things that you weren't proud of. Let go isn't just like, oh, I don't care anymore, I'm not gonna think about it. Letting go really is like a process where you see reality for what it is, you see your past for what it is, you thank it, you are grateful for it to show you the things, or for it to teach you all the things that you've learned, and for you to be able to move on from it in like a very non-emotional, peaceful, rational way. And I think that's one of the hardest things. And that's, I think, the thing that took me the longest to really be able to identify what caused me all the pain and why I felt all the pain and why I no longer need to feel all the pain. So taking time to make sense of the past, letting go of the past, and number 5, so that you can fully focus on yourself in the present, in this moment, because it all goes back to 2 mediocre companies do not make a great company. And the importance of self-care, the importance of taking good care of yourself, the importance of learning about who you are, learning about the things you are passionate about, learning about what moves you, learning about what drives you, learning about what wakes you up in the morning, what makes you want to get up in the morning. I just hit my lamp. So many things for us to learn and discover about ourselves. And I think a really great question to ask yourself is, are you your own best friend? It's the saying that you need to be your own best friend before you can be someone else's best friend. And I think this is relevant in a platonic sense and a romantic sense, where you really need to know who you are before you can be really good in a relationship with anyone else. So another quote from Good to Great: when what you are deeply passionate about, what you can be the best in the world at, and what drives your economic engine come together, not only does your work move toward greatness, but so does your life. For in the end, it is impossible to have a great life unless it is a meaningful life. And it is very difficult to have a meaningful life without meaningful work. Perhaps then you might gain that rare tranquility that comes from knowing that you've had a hand in creating something of intrinsic excellence that makes a contribution. Indeed, you might even gain the deepest of all satisfaction, knowing that your short time here on earth has been well spent and that it mattered. By focusing on yourself, by focusing on your work, by focusing on your own life is so important, because meaning, right? Like meaning in life, meaning in work, knowing what's important to you, knowing what's meaningful to you, and doing that, taking time to focus on yourself, taking time to figure out what's important to you is so important, because that quote to me is what it means to live a meaningful life. And many people don't, because it's so easy to settle for a good life rather than a great life. Number 6 is to make sense of this alone time. So I say alone because if you think being alone is a terrible thing and it's the worst thing in the world, and you hate being alone in your own thoughts and just being by yourself, then you're gonna have a really hard time coping with being alone. But if you see being alone through a different lens, through a different light, through a different perspective of how... So this is something that I learned when I was in Taiwan taking care of my grandpa in 2014, right after I graduated. I realized that as a child, you grow up. And when you grow up, you have maybe a few years in your 20s to just really be by yourself. You get married and you have children. And then you spend 18, 20 years raising this child to become an adult. You have maybe another 2, 3, 4, 5 years for yourself to kind of like figure out what you want to do. And this is generally the time where you have a midlife crisis where you're like, okay, my purpose and my existence of being for the past 18 to 20 years has just left the nest. My child, is off being an adult. So like, who am I and what do I do with myself? And then you have a few years to figure this out. And then your parents start getting old and you start having to take care of your parents. And it just never really ends. When I realized this in 2014, I was like, okay, if this is my future, if I only have these next few years to figure out who I am and to work on myself, then I should not take it for granted. And like, I should take this alone time as something so precious, because when a kid comes out, you don't have something called alone time. So I think it's so important to embrace the beauty and the privilege of having this time for ourselves, for myself, for yourself, to do the things that we want to do, to figure out who we are and what's important to us, and to try all the things we want to try, go to the places we want to go to, travel, to eat things, to start the companies you want to start a YouTube channel, to do anything that you want to do, because this is the time to do it. Like, there's no better time to do all the things you want to do. So yeah, I think just having time is so like, it really is a privilege. And I think when you learn to appreciate that time in general, and time for yourself, beautiful things will happen. And the 7th thing is follow the course of nature. Trust in yourself, trust in the mighty forces, have faith in yourself, have faith in the universe, have faith in God that things will happen when they're supposed to happen. Because I really realized and found that when I fight and chase something, be it a relationship, be it anything, I will probably have to spend the coming months and the coming years fighting for it and chasing it. And fighting for something like that and chasing something like that is so tiring. And for me, it got too tiring. I was fighting for my ego, and I was chasing this status and chasing this image, or this image of myself that's just so silly. And I'm at a place now where I realize the most important thing that I can do right now, and the only thing that's fully in my control. I look like a fly. They're like the only thing that I have in my full control is myself. Working on myself, working on bettering myself, working on figuring out who I am and what's important to me and what I want to do, the person I want to be, so that when the person is placed in front of me, or when our paths cross, it's just two good people being great together. Yeah, so the past 4 years just kind of flew by with me being not in a relationship. And I think I'm just at a point in my life right now where I am so aware of who I am, the good and the bad, and I'm so aware of the person that, like, I'm so aware of my values and what's important to me, so that it's not that it's hard to find someone who shares the same values, but like it's pretty hard. I don't think many people would share in the same values as me. The more you get to know yourself, the more you will know the kind of relationship that you want to be in and the kind of person you will want to be in a relationship with. And I think that comes with being realistic that it might not, like, your pool maybe has dwindled to like a very small pool, and that's completely okay. And I think that's where trust and faith comes in, because I don't feel like I'm 100% in control of my life, because there's someone greater up there watching out for me and looking out for me, and that everything is beautifully arranged and beautifully planned out, so that I don't need to freak out day to day about like, why am I single? Why am I still single? Time is ticking. I don't have time. Follow the course of nature, trust yourself, do the things you want to do because you want to do it, not because you feel like you have to, or not because you feel like there's some sort of a pressure to do certain things or to have any sort of timeline, because you don't really want to force anything and you don't really want to settle. I mean, we're really lucky that we have the choice to choose, because a lot of our parents didn't, and a lot of people might not be able to. And I think that's just one thing that I just realized as I was saying this. Yeah, I think maybe like 7.2 is gratitude. Just being grateful that we get to stress about significant others, because in other countries or even in parts of the US, if your day-to-day is struggling with like roof over your head and food in your stomach, you won't be able to think about these things. So yeah, I think gratitude at the end of the day is such a powerful thing. Life and existence and being alive and the opportunities that we're given and the chances, just the life that we live. The fact that you can watch me through your phone or through a computer screen or through your tablet means that we're all very lucky and that we're all very blessed. And this ending just went like a whoop. But yes, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below if you guys have any follow-up questions or if there's specific things you want me to talk about, because this is probably part 1 of the art of being alone but not lonely. So I didn't really talk about the alone part, but I think this is like the start of a series of like relationship type videos. Okay. That was me doing a little dancing hug with you guys, maybe. Alrighty, virtual hug, voice hug, all the hugs. Okay, bye. Okay, bye.